Thank you, Mr Chairman. I wanted to continue on where my colleague Ian Leith-Galloway left off, and that was this part deals with a licensing regime. And I think this is a very sensible approach that's being taken in this bill. And it does set out, and we did include, as Ian Leith-Galloway said, that not only are we going to have people who must have licences to import these psychoactive substances and to manufacture them and to research on them, but also to sell them and to sell at retail and at wholesale. So this is a very interesting approach to this particular drug, or these drugs. And I'm wondering whether we're not putting in place a very, very good regime for the future for the selling of tobacco. Because we know that these substances, when they finally hit the market, would have to been shown to be very low risk. This is the whole tenor of this bill. And so, having been found to be low risk, we're then requiring a licence to be able to sell them at a retail, wholesale, etc. Now, what we do know is that tobacco is a much, much more dangerous product. In fact, not one cigarette is good for you. We know the dangers of tobacco. We have known for many, many years, and we've seen the impact on health and on mortality in New Zealand of tobacco. And I'm wondering whether this is not a very good opening for us to have licensing of tobacco sellers. At the moment, you can buy tobacco at a supermarket, in a dairy at the corner. It is freely available at a right age. And we say there is an age to sell these low-risk products, and we license them, and we run a licensing regime. I think the time will come to consider a similar regime for tobacco. And I'm thinking that maybe our committee, in our recommendation to licence retailers, that we are groundbreaking in our approach for the future. What this licensing regime does is to ensure that you have a fit and proper person or a body corporate that's a fit and proper body corporate to be able to apply for a licence. And I think there will be those that will be looking at what that fit and proper person meaning is. There is a feeling that some of those that have sold legal highs are not really particularly concerned about what the impact of those legal highs are on the people they're selling to. They're not all that concerned about what's in them so long as they are turning over a quick buck. So I think the idea that the application by an individual, the person must be a fit and proper person to have that licence, and that's regardless of what they are doing. And so that fit and proper, whether it's the corporate, body corporate, or whether it is the individual, that I think is going to be, for me, I want to know what that fit and proper person test is going to be. It does set out whether they've had a conviction and so on, but are they able to get around that by getting somebody else to apply for their licence? This will be a part where we need to keep an eye on it. And also there is going to be penalties, and they're quite stiff penalties in this legislation for those offences against relating to importation of psychoactive substances without a licence. So if someone thinks that they're going to be able to bring in a substance and they're not going to have a licence, they are going to find that they are hit by a pretty big fine indeed. In fact, if they're an individual, they will find that they could have been in line for a term of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years, or if in the case of a body corporate, a fine not exceeding $500,000. And so what we have put in this bill are pretty strong penalties for those who decide to import psychoactive substances without that licence. I think that is also a very good move. We do also in this bill require there to be a code of manufacturing practice. And this was an area I was, Mr.
Honourable
Chairman,
Annick King.
this was an area I was interested in, because quite a number of these legal highs will be manufactured overseas. They won't be manufactured in New Zealand. They'll be done in premises at different parts of the world. And so what this bill does, first of all, is to establish a code of practice that must be adhered to. And that code is what that manufacturer will be audited against. So there will be an audit and the ability to audit manufacturing premises and practices outside New Zealand. I can see how easy it would be to have an authorised person or persons within New Zealand to do an audit. But I was concerned that it would be a very costly exercise to do an audit outside New Zealand. What we have been informed is that, in fact, the cost of that audit outside New Zealand has to be borne by the manufacturer of that product. So taxpayers don't need to feel concerned that they're going to be up for the cost of flying authorised people from New Zealand to the back blocks of China, India, Denmark, or wherever they're going to be made. That in fact this cost is going to fall onto the manufacturer who has to have that audit carried out. There is also we made an amendment in this bill as well, which I'm desperately trying to find, and it was around changing for the code to come in force. The code was going to come into force after 1 year. This is the code that you would have to audit against for manufacturing of these products. We in the Select Committee decided that it should come into force much sooner than that. In fact, we amended it so that it comes into force within 6 months. And I think that the work has to be done in getting everything in place, and we acknowledge that work will need to be done. But making sure that within 6 months there will be a code that goes alongside all the other changes so that we can audit the manufacturing of these products both inside and outside New Zealand. Another part of here in part 2 that I think is worth mentioning, that is this part also sets up a Psychoactive Substances Appeal Committee. Now, the function of this committee is to determine appeals against the decisions of the authority, and this is seen to be having to have an actual justice course for appeals against decisions an authority makes. Of course, in any of these things, there does have to be the ability to appeal decisions. They're not always right. They don't get everything 100% right. And so there is to be an appeals committee. It's a 3-member committee, and one of the members of that committee must be a lawyer with not less than 7 years at legal experience, so that there can be a legal eye put over some of the decisions if there is an appeal to this authority. So this part, Mr. Chairman, is very much the working part, if you like, the nuts and bolts of how this legislation is going to work. The other part, which is in here, is the approval of products and what sort of products would be approved, and it goes into some detail about the information that would be required and so on. So, Mr. Chairman, I think we made this better at the Select Committee. I think we're going to make it work better, and I certainly support the changes and the way we're going about this whole regime by having a licensing regime and requiring there to be a high standard in terms of the manufacturing, the selling, the wholesale, retail, etc. of these products.
Mr. Chair. The Honourable Todd McLeay.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. This is an important part of the bill.